Hello and welcome to another episode of IDS Podcast, and I'm here with Sal from East End Interiors. I'm sure most people who are designers or who are affiliated with the industry in some way or another know Sal from East End. And you were past and maybe first president of IDS Long Island chapter. I hope I'm not misstepping there, but I think it was the first, but definitely past president. So Sal, thanks for coming on and taking a few minutes of your time. I know you're insanely busy, so I appreciate it. But just to start, I mean, let's, give us the quick version of who you are. Let's talk about East End and I guess how you got started in this business, and then we'll just talk a little bit about your previous role with IDS.
Sure. So, well, first, Brian, thanks for having me, and thank you for taking the time out. I know that you're also a very busy person, and you've been doing some traveling lately. So, I'm grateful to have this opportunity to kind of
story of my life.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. First let me say I am past president of the Long Island Interior Design Society. I was not the first president for the Long Island chapter. I'm actually the second president, but the chapter was so small at that time. Most of the people that we know that are active in the chapter now weren't really in the picture during its very beginning years. There's just a few of us still remaining, but it's been an amazing journey to be part of IDS, and it was a privilege to serve on the board of the Long Island chapter. I've also served on the national board, and we still try to be involved. If it's not me personally, it's other people on our team here, whether it's different committees or activities that the chapter does. So we always try to plug in wherever we can.
And events. I know you have a couple events a year go on by East End. So speaking of which, let's talk about a little bit about East End and how that whole thing. I mean, I know it's a family business, so how that started, and I think it was started by your parents originally, but how that started and how where you are, I guess. What is it? More than 30 years now at this point.
We are 36 years. So my mom actually started in the business. She was a stay-at-home mom when we were younger, and she decided she wanted to get into the workforce, but she wanted to follow her passion, which was interior design. At that time, she enrolled in Parsons School of Design, and there she began her journey. When she finished school, she worked for a very small interior design firm in Patchogue, and at a certain point, her boss was retiring and sold the business. It was a very small showroom at the time, and that's when my parents, bought the business, and at that time renamed it to East End Interiors, and the journey began, and that was in 1990. Over the years, the location, changed, and they moved to a larger location to try to accommodate more room for product display and to be able to show different manufacturer lines and also to have room for more designers that came on staff with us. And I joined about 20 years ago,
cool.
Just over 20 years, and my sister is also in the business. And my father is now full-time in the business. He's been full-time for many years now as well. So it kind of started actually with my mom, who kind of pioneered in the field, and then we kind of gravitated one by one to join the family business. But at that time, Brian, East End Interiors was really a retail design firm. We were a furniture showroom with in-house designers, and we serviced consumers directly. Always through the design process. We never really functioned as a retail in that transactional sense. It was always about engaging the client for the design process, and then we would unfold from there. When I came on board, I had a vision of a more trade-oriented model, and that's really where the journey began for the transition from East End Interior, how East End Interiors transitioned from retail to trade only. But it was a very gradual process, because for a number of years we were doing both models. We were retail design and to the trade. And then there came a point where we realized that we would be more effective to the interior design community if we would be solely dedicated to the trade, that we could service them at a better level than we were currently doing, because in all honesty, we had the distractions of our own projects, and it was hard to really focus on the designers and supporting them on all the aspects of their projects when we were tied up with some of our own projects. So we made a very bold decision at the time, because the trade business was less than 50% of our revenue when we made that decision. But we believed in the model, and the family and the entire staff at that time was in full agreement, and we just went all in. And that was the point at which we became trade only. So from that point on, East End Interiors no longer service their own clients. We do not service our own clients, and we're able to focus all of our energy and efforts strictly to the design trade, to just really help them succeed in their projects, regardless of the size, right? Designers come in sometimes with a small project, sometimes very large projects. Sometimes there's designers that we see on a frequent basis. Other times there's designers we see every now and again. But everybody gets the same level of treatment, and we really look to make them succeed in whatever the project they have before them.
Yeah, so that on that note, when you just compare yourself to like a furniture store, or you're strictly a to the trade showroom, and you're basically built around designer success. So for designers who are not necessarily familiar with a to the trade only showroom, what are you doing for them that they can't do alone?
So there's a lot of different aspects. Obviously, product sourcing is a big part of it, right? They come to us because we're a multi-line showroom, and we have the ability to deliver a lot of different product lines to them. So we have all that available to them without them necessarily having to commit to any minimum requirements or annual volumes with each company that on a separate basis. So we kind of handle that under one roof here. But in addition to the product offerings that we have, it's we offer a lot of support when they come in and they're working on projects. So our objective is that we want their time to be as efficient as possible, because time is money. And if they could come in here, work on a project, and they're trying to source things, our expertise is really understanding the product lines and knowing where to go for a specific look at, let's say, specific price points. Not every designer is as well versed on on how all the product lines work. So we kind of bring them up to speed, and they're able to capitalize on efficiency that way. So when they come in here, and let's say they park themselves on one of the tables in our library, they could be here for several hours. We serve lunch. We do, we're very hospitable. There's coffee and, something to, fresh fruit or something all day long. Yeah. So we keep everybody fed here. That's always been our policy from day one. But they're able to get a lot accomplished at each visit that they come. And that we found to be very critical as part of the process. The other aspects are the back-end support. We have an entire office staff here that handles all the logistics that go into the ordering process. I mean, and if it was only as easy as placing an order and getting the product in a matter of weeks, then we wouldn't need to be doing this. But clearly, that's not the way it works. There's a lot of moving parts. Especially when you're dealing with custom, that orders need to really be put together correctly so there's no mistakes. And then logistically, we have to be able to follow up and help consolidate these orders. So there's a lot of support we offer in the office end. The other aspect that we offer is in the logistics with receiving and deliveries.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Yeah, deliveries and installation.
So that's a newer arm to the business. And again, just always trying to figure out ways to kind of up the game and provide designers with an even better level of service, another layer that would, that ultimately is meaningful for them and their success. We found that by taking on that aspect of the business that we would be able to have more control that sometimes we didn't get. Well, not sometimes. We just didn't get it from third-party warehouses. It was very difficult because they were receiving for a lot of different people, and even if we have a fair amount of volume, so even being an important customer for a third-party warehouse still doesn't give you the ability to really do things the way you want to do it. So having the control there has really been helpful for us, because every single item that comes into our warehouse gets fully opened and inspected. Everything is wrapped with blankets and shrink wrap, so it's well protected. When it gets delivered to the home, it's very rare do we have any issues. Not to say that things don't happen, because they do. It's the reality of any business. But which brings me to the other point of what we offer to the designers, which is very, very important. And I really learned this very early on in the process. But we're very effective at resolving claims. When there are issues, obviously the best way to find an issue is to inspect it at the warehouse and get it resolved before it even is brought to the customer's home. But in the event it goes beyond that and there's a problem that develops after delivery or on delivery, or just something that happens. Sometimes there's issues where the customer or somebody made a mistake or something of that sort. We get very creative with solving problems. And the objective is to make the customer, make that end user happy. Sometimes, the process is grueling to go through, right? Nobody likes to deal with a claims issue at all. But we try to get it resolved as quickly as possible, make it as painless as possible, and then everybody can move on and we just go on to the next project.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I have a question for, I guess I'll speak on behalf of newer designers who are newer to not only just using a trade-only source like yourself, but just new to the whole process. Where have you seen a lot of these newer designers getting tripped up the most in this process, and maybe what are some solutions for that? Sorry to put you on the spot like that. I know.
Yeah. Well, newer designers, I think, the more experience that a designer has, they're able to navigate their projects a little bit more efficiently and timely. Newer designers, we find, tend to maybe take a little bit more time to go through that process. Not a terrible thing. That's par for the course, right?
Understandably so, yeah.
That's the way things work. The other thing is sometimes newer designers may tend to fixate on things that maybe are not as important or not as critical. Sometimes we'll see them kind of agonizing over like a measurement that could be literally, less than an inch. Sometimes when you step back and you're looking at the context of, let's say, a room and how the furniture lays out, not every scenario is that, would that be that critical so sometimes they get into the weeds of the details, which is, again, not a terrible thing, because they're really trying to aim for perfection and they're trying to avoid mistakes. So that's a good thing, and we obviously help navigate that. But I think it's just a question of kind of getting in and starting the process, and that's really, we've seen through the years that we've been doing this, so many of the designers that are now what we would consider well-seasoned designers. I remember like it was yesterday when they first started. And like one designer in particular, she was working on a project and there was a sectional in a den. It was the first sectionals that she ever was, proposing and selling to a client. And at the time, my mother was helping her with this layout of the room. And the next day she came in like frantically because she couldn't sleep that night, and she was concerned that, I don't recall the details, it was either too big or too small. I think it was actually, she was concerned it was too small. She didn't want to be in a position where she didn't scale it right for the room, because it was a pretty big room.
Yeah.
And she was so overwhelmed, and she barely could sleep that night, and she kind of got in the morning as soon as we opened, and she's like, I got to make sure this is right, I got to figure this out. And we unpacked it, we went through, checked all the measurements, made sure everything was laid out correctly. You want to make sure with a sectional that the correct sides are facing, that if the chaise is on the right, you want it on the correct side, not that you order it in the reverse configuration. So those are normal processes that a new designer goes through, and it's just part of the learning curve. Our objective is really to help them go through those processes, help them navigate it, and ultimately avoid mistakes. So, an aspect of what we offer, like on the design side of things, because, we have designers on staff now. We're obviously not doing our own projects, but we kind of speak the language. So we can look at a plan, or we can look at a design challenge that's in front of us and help determine the correct solution. And I feel like a lot of designers appreciate that. Some need it less than others, but a newer designer may be a little bit more reliant on that aspect of the service.
Sure. Well, let me ask you one final question, kind of to piggyback off what you were just saying. We spoke about seasoned designers and newer designers, but is there, I guess, a common theme or something you notice in common with a lot of the designers who get the most out of your work, whether it's besides obviously being seasoned, but like the type of showroom you have, these are the type of designers that sort of kind of gravitate to us?
So it's a very interesting point, because there's a lot of different aspects to this business, like many businesses, right? So it's a question of where you're spending your time and energy. We find that the designers that really partner with us in terms of, sourcing from us, they're really dedicated on, they're committed that the majority of their sourcing is essentially coming from us. What that allows them to do is it allows them to focus on their business. And it's ironic, not really, I'm saying it in jest, but that they seem to be the designers that are the busiest. They seem to have the most projects. They seem to have the biggest projects. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it and you look at it, because they really focus on their business, and they don't get caught up in the weeds or the details of all the different aspects of the business that they are able to kind of outsource through us. And every designer handles things differently, and some may want to source from a trade showroom at different amounts versus sourcing on their own. And listen, whatever portion it is, it's we always welcome any business, and we're appreciative of that. But I have to say that a very consistent theme that I see is that the busiest designers seem to be the ones that really partner with us and rely on us for the sourcing aspect, and they seem to be more focused on getting new jobs and really maximizing the projects that they do.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. Let's transition a little, because we spoke quite a bit about East End, but I want to talk about Metropolitan. I think that's a big thing, not only for IDS, but for Long Island in general. And I do want to spend a good significant amount of time talking about it. So, as I guess a way to segue into that, and we'll explain to people kind of what it is and how you got into it. But when they originally closed, I guess it was 2022, right? 4 years ago. I guess the best way to put it, what did Long Island basically lose when they closed? And then what was the point where you were like, all right, maybe this is something we should consider?
So it was the school always served a very important purpose for the interior design industry in the Long Island area. I think anybody that was in the industry at that time and really tuned in, I would agree with that. And we were really faced with, when we heard the news that they were going to close, because we weren't sure what was going to happen. Everything was kind of in limbo for a period of time. We were hoping they weren't going to close, and we were hoping that there was going to be a way that it was going to be continued. We had no idea that it was going to be our involvement in it. But what happened was, when I remember getting an email that was sent, and it was basically an announcement that they were going to close for good. It was at that point that we reached out and we started the discussions. And at first I kind of said, let me just have a conversation. right? Talk. There's no big commitment in just having making a phone call and having a conversation. And that's exactly how it started. And it just kind of developed from there. And we realized that there was a path. We didn't realize how long it would take, but we realized that there was a path to make it work. And when we kind of regrouped as a team in-house, and we were kind of laughing about it because we're like, what are we doing here? I mean, but it all kind of made sense. I mean, I could say this, my mother has always been an advocate for education in design, because sometimes you have designers that come through the door and they're a little green, and they could be better served if they had more education. That also works well with experience, but the two work well hand in hand. So she was always passionate about that. Again, never saying that we wanted to open a school, but another funny point to this is one of our designers in-house, Diane, who's been with us for a number of years, she would always joke around, because we always found ourselves working with designers and educating them any way we could, and she would always joke around and say, we need to set up an East End university. And it was always like something we laughed at. And it came to a point where we were entrenched in the process, and I turned to her at one point and said, well, I guess you said it enough times, because here we are, and we're moving forward with this school. So it was a long process. It took us over 4 years to get our license, and that's just something we didn't know would take that long. Honestly, I didn't even think it would take half that time.
Yeah.
But it's a very involved process. There's multi-steps with getting a license from the New York State Department of Education. But we're here now. We got it, and now we're moving forward.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I want to take just a quick step back and just kind of get to the basic level of what Metropolitan Design School is, who it's for, because we talked about you getting into it, and obviously we mentioned that it's a design school out here in Long Island, so that everyone knows. But who's the type of student that you are bringing on? Is it people right out of, I should say kids, but younger adults right out of high school? Is it people who just want to get continuing education? Is it both? Is it people who just graduated college and looking for their next stage in their education? Who's your ideal target student?
So it's really a mix. It's kind of all of the above. Historically, and even just in our first term that we've started with the total of 12 students that we have a little bit of each of the demographics, but obviously mainly it's for that person that just has a passion for interior design and just wants to pursue it. I do think, and historically the way the old school operated, and I think it seems like our school will probably follow a similar path, but there are students who are kind of career changers, where perhaps they went to college for something totally different, maybe worked in a field for a period of time, and then get to a point in life. Sometimes they maybe left the workforce for a period of time to, let's say, raise a family, and now they want to kind of get back into the workforce, but they want to do something that they're passionate about. And this gives them an opportunity to kind of really jump right into that, to the program, and kind of get up to speed timely, and really learn, the core details on interior design.
Cool. So you mentioned you're obviously New York State licensed, which was, a process getting. So having that license, I mean, what type of degree are your students getting at the end? And how does being licensed play into your curriculum? So
the curriculum, which is approved by New York State, that's part of the licensing process. It's a 5-part program, and upon the completion of the 5 parts, a student receives a diploma. So we have, it's called Practical Aspects of Interior Design is the name of the program. There's Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. and each one, part one focuses on history and color theory and space planning. Part two, they start learning how to do hand drafting, and then part three, they actually touch upon commercial design. In addition to that, there is a business class, and then there's a class on SketchUp, where they learn how to do computer drafting. So upon completion of the 5 parts, a student earns a diploma, and that typically it's about a 2-year process.
Okay, yeah, that business class sounds like, I'm gonna compare myself, for example, and I hate to sit here and talk about myself. That's not my intention. But, I went to art school for a 4-year program in Manhattan, and it was all creative for 4 years, and there was no business class, and I pretty much got out of school, and you're looking for jobs and things that are, especially in art school, things that are cool and they speak to you. But I had a job, right out of college as a retoucher in New York City for a design house, and I was retouching, and in 2008 or 9, I forgot exactly when the recession hit, I got laid off, and I was like, all right, now it's time for me to start shooting on my own, and I had no idea what to do. I had no business sense, nothing. I didn't know how to run a business. I barely knew Excel, because you're basically doing creative for 4 years,
right?
And I had no idea. So I think the importance of business classes, like what you mentioned, is so undervalued in any sort of creative industry, and so important.
It is, because it's generally not the main reason why people are even passionate about the field to begin with. Usually it's the creative aspects that drive the passion, but the business, it comes in no matter what, right? No matter what field you're working in, the business part and the business knowledge is critical. So with to that point, shortly after we received our license, we applied with New York State to have the business class and SketchUp offered as electives. So in addition to taking the 5-part program, for anyone that wants to, let's say, just take the business class or just take SketchUp, as long as you meet some of the criteria to take it as an elective, it's available. So, and the reason we did that is we have a lot of designers that have, are educated in the field and been working in the field, and they have plenty of experience, but they'll say, hey, I wouldn't mind taking that business class and kind of polishing up on some of my business skills. Or also with SketchUp, and where some designers say, I would really like to learn how to maybe move off of hand drafting and do my own, computer drafting. So we are now able to offer business and SketchUp as electives that are separate of the entire program. And then upon completion of those classes, if you take it as an elective, you basically get a certificate of completion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, from one creative to another, most of the people listening are interior designers. Take that business class; it's crucial, and I can say from first, even though I'm not a designer, but I can say from firsthand experience.
I agree with that.
It's so valuable just to learn how to run your business operations. I know you said you have 10 students enrolled, and obviously it's your first term, so that's sort of expected, and that's actually, I think, pretty good for your first term of a new school.
Actually 12.
That's what I said. What did I say? 10?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well, I meant 12. I heard you say 12 earlier. So that's pretty good. Is the intention long term to keep the classes at a small size to help advance education? And on that note, is your plan to always be in person versus potentially online one day?
So the size of our class is actually, that's another thing that New York State oversees. So we kind of have cap limits based on the type of class and the size of the classroom. So our classes will never be like huge, like lecture hall type classes. We'd probably be, on average somewhere in the, low to mid 20s at the high end of how many students, we would have, let's say, in each class. So it ultimately will always be kind of an intimate experience for the student, and we're also going to be offering options for, in addition to our daytime classes, we're going to be offering evening classes for in the fall. So again, that'll give students the opportunity to, choose, what works best for their schedule based on if they're working or not and all that stuff. But I think the objective is always to kind of have more of that intimate one-on-one approach. I don't see us going to any online platform. I think there's so many options out there for that. I think what separates us from so many of the other interior design programs that are out on the market is the fact that we are in person rather than online. So we are really looking to focus on developing that and make it more of a hands-on experience.
All right, and let me ask you one final question about that. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, your showroom now and the school are under one roof, correct?
Yes, we are two separate spaces,
entities, but in the same buildings.
Same buildings, right next door to each other.
So does that benefit your students in any way? I mean, is there part of, besides the learning, they can actually see a real world trade showroom right there in front of them? How does that benefit them?
It certainly is a benefit because they can see a showroom, and even like after class they can just hop on over and just check things out. Sometimes the teacher may want to just show them something again, after class they can come over and check things out. Or so we encourage students to connect with a lot of different resources and showrooms in the local area. Having East End Interiors right next door is certainly an added benefit because you can't get any closer than that. So they can certainly take a look and see how a showroom operates and really get a sense of how the actual day-to-day business unfolds. So and where we, like many other showrooms in the area, have always been welcome to students coming in and connecting with them because they're the future of the industry. So whatever we can do to help support them, whether it's whether their desire is to work for a design firm or pursue their own business, we've always been supportive of helping them develop their goals.
Cool. So a designer who is interested in finding out more info or future students, what's the first step they take?
Well, definitely connect with us on social. We are going to be scheduling some open houses for the school, so it's an opportunity to come in and interact with some of the teachers that are teaching, along with the staff. But if you can't make any of the open house dates and you want to just do a private tour, you can just reach out to the school directly, and we can schedule that. We do that all the time. So whether it's just picking up the phone and giving a call, or just connect with us. Shoot us an email or on our website, and we also have all the information about the programs on our website with the breakdown of each course and the costs associated as well.
That's Met Design School, right? MetDesignSchool.com.
MetDesignSchool.com.
Cool. And I know as we wrap up, I know, Sal, you guys, I guess, as East End, but maybe Metropolitan is involved also at this point, where you have events throughout the year through IDS, through other stuff, different things you offer the industry overall. So I do invite anybody who is interested in, besides for the school itself, but interested in checking out what events might be going on by your place. Follow you both on social, both the Met Design School and East End Interiors. EastEndInteriors.com is your regular website. I mean, why don't you give a little plug for all the different ways people can follow both of your entities? Sure.
Well, you can follow us on social. I mean, Instagram seems to be the most active platform right now. EastEndInteriors.com for East End Interiors, MetDesignSchool.com for Metropolitan Design School. And I would also say for East End Interiors, we do a lot through email marketing. So if you are not receiving our emails, again, connect with us and we'll put you on our mailing list. So anytime we do any events, it's invite through email. If there's any sort of promotion, or sometimes we'll have sale items, again, because we don't do anything public facing, so you'll never know something's on sale just by coming into the showroom. So that's all done through private email marketing, because we want to directly target who we're sending this information to. So if you're not getting our information or any correspondence from us, definitely get connected with us on the email list.
All right, cool. Can I ask you like one personal question?
Sure.
What is it like? Because I don't know if you knew this. I'm a second generation photographer as well.
I didn't know.
What is it like growing up in the business that you're in now? Because I like to hear from other people who are second generation and just kind of hear their perspective on it. Because I'm in the same boat. What is it like growing up in a business? And my father was a wedding photographer, so he wasn't doing commercial or design like I'm doing. But nevertheless, I still grew up in a household like that. What is it like from your perspective to be in the business you grew up in?
So it's interesting because I could speak for all of the family that's in the business. Other than my mom, none of us really had the intention to be in the business. It all kind of happened organically. So, my father was the first to join the business. My father is an engineer by trade. So he worked, in his field for years and years. And then as the business grew and the demands grew, he had to make a decision to come over, and as opposed to just helping out on weekends, then he became full-time. My sister was the next to join. She went to school for environmental planning, environmental science, and she worked in her industry for a number of years, and then, there was an opportunity that they needed some help, and she came on board. And I really had no intentions personally. I went to school for landscape design and horticulture. I was in the landscape business. I had my own landscaping company since I was a young kid, and I really started helping in an off season. It was a winter season. Didn't have much going on, and I just wanted to kill some time. So I told my parents, "Hey, why don't I come and help you?" And I started unpacking boxes, and opening up, items in the back receiving room. So that's how that started, and then it just started to unfold into this kind of organic form that we're in now, where it just made sense, and so it wasn't planned, which is and sometimes with let's say a legacy industry or business or in the family, the kids are kind of groomed in that way. Which is good when it's and when it works, obviously. But with us, it was kind of like it happened, and we realized it worked, and then we just kind of went all in.
Went with it.
I have one sibling that is not in the business.
Okay, they want it out, huh? Anyway, all right, cool. So thank you, Sal. I know this was I think we've been talking about doing this for a year or two already. So I'm glad that we finally. I
appreciate your patience.
I'm glad we finally got it going. And at the time when we were talking about this a year or two ago, obviously I didn't know what you had going on with Metropolitan, because I guess it wasn't officially announced yet. But now once that's all done, I guess now it makes sort of sense why we couldn't get it done beforehand. But I want to thank you for your time. I hope this was valuable to designers and potential students alike. We told people how to find you: East End Interiors, Metropolitan Design School. And again, just thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.